Good. Okay. Well, when's the last time you saw them? I mean, you haven't been out there in. Well, you haven't changed that much in 3 or 4 years' time. Corey looks about the same. I remember you going out there. Well, it's been since I've been here. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you might got another donation. Did you hit them up this time? Say, look, I'm going back to Cuba. I might need some more. Did I? Did you get the pictures that I forwarded from? I send you things all the time. You're typical. You don't respond. Group stuff where you guys had been digging, where you all were digging at. They started working on it more. They may have a foundation poured on it by now. He did. Yeah. He was the excavator. TNT Excavating is what that was. TNT Excavating. I don't know what all they were doing there, but they went to work on it. They worked on it some more. He sent me a message. Pastor Tueta sent me a message and said their direction had changed since our visit. As a result of our visit, their direction of ministry had changed. Yeah. And they were praying. But he also sent me pictures of them digging. They want I think the idea was that the church was going to become more of a ministry center than what they had anticipated it being to begin with. So they were wanting to jump on it, get some more done as quick as possible. So it's good. That's good.
So they didn't go back in and fill in all that he dug out?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. We've had that happen in the past.
Oh, really?
We had that happen in Puerto Rico. Everything was good up until the point where we decided to do some sheetrock work. They wanted sheetrock work done, and none of us are sheetrock people. None of us. We were putting it together in pieces, scrapping. Don't want to waste this piece. And Tyler was the worst of the bunch. Cut this out, cut a triangle out right here, and put it in that little hole right here, and slice it. They went in. Yes, he did. We're trying to mud it. We don't have mud knives. We don't have the right tools to do it with. And they went in, from what I understand, they went in right behind us and tore that out. Took that sheetrock down. The scrapped side especially, they took all that down and started over. It is. It really is. It's an art. Yeah. I've never been a fan of sheetrock work. You probably could. I don't know why. No, it's not useful. It's not useful to know. There are some things in life that you just don't have to worry about somebody else having to, there are other people that can do that. The what?
The lawyer paneling, like the wood.
Oh, yeah.
4x8 sheets of, I guess that was laminate in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tack it up.
Tack it up. Yep.
Did not age well.
Yeah. And you have to do all that stuff now. You can't buy a house without it having to be DIY'd. You got to go and fix things. Everything, because nothing, since all those shows came out, started coming out years ago on remodeling and repairing and fixing and makeovers and all that, nobody's satisfied with what you buy. You got to have something, it's got to be fixed.
I mean, I feel like too though, like even like the construction quality of like most new build houses, like at least in the subdivision that I live at is relatively subpar compared to even something built just 10 years prior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just crazy.
Yeah, your subdivision started, what, about 5 years ago?
Windsor Park. So that's like the one. Oh, okay.
Yeah, where all of a sudden there's just a massive line of houses back through there.
And there's like more being built.
His cousin built it. Inmates did.
I'd trust it if they did. I'd trust it more.
I was thinking they were framing anyway.
May have been.
I don't see
May have been.
doing a lot of finish work.
They were
Maybe
doing
they can.
freeform like trusses and stuff. We brought in walls already built. Hell, they just put them up.
Went fast.
You remember there's like kind of like fiber sid walls. I don't know if you know.
What?
Fiber sids, like walls that are already built.
Oh, yeah.
Outlets and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Order it pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just amazed at how quickly your subdivision, how fast the second section of it started up.
Are we talking about this on camera?
Yeah. But the thing about it is that they can't hear you, they can just hear me. So I'm making the positive statements here. You guys say whatever you want. I'm turning it positive. I was impressed, but it's not my style. I wouldn't want to, because they're just right on top of each other back in there, and golly. I mean, that's normal for some places. Is that that's normal in Michigan?
Well, depends on where you live.
The location?
Depends on the city, just depends. I know HOAs are a lot more common up there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we heard that like the price of this HOA was like 120 a year, like we thought it was like a typo, like 120 a month, like that's more common, if not more, But
They're trying to make Franklin like Nashville and Louisville. It's like a fever.
Mm-hmm.
So Portland booming, everything's booming in that line. And
Oh,
they're
yeah.
trying to make Franklin professional.
Jeremy, y'all have HOAs in your subdivision? No. Okay. Do you have an HOA? Is your
yeah, all new subdivisions going forward have HOAs, and actually
Williamsburg have HOA?
so Williamsburg, I was actually just about to bring that up, so I learned some interesting stuff about that the other week. So they have like 3 or 4 different HOAs in there, all different parts.
Because of the time frame of being built?
Well, that and just a whole bunch of, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff that goes along with that, but
There's different phases and different owners.
well, that too, and like they couldn't get, like the developer Jody couldn't, I don't know,
No, I don't think you would have to, because it's already, your subdivision is finished.
Unless y'all all, as a community, decide on that thing.
You're about to get a whole new section of houses in your community.
Where?
Just past you on the right, down there on the
That whoever buys that, lost their mind.
I know. I drove past there today or yesterday. I was past that way, just cut through, and I went,
That thing's flood.
how in the world?
I mean, it's been up to here.
I don't understand how they could even, is that kind of on the north side?
I don't know either.
That's the one on Stewart.
Okay, I think I know.
You know where it is, what I told you. It is, no, you can't. I mean, water gets up there.
Yeah, but the wooded areas in there, that just falls off. There's no land. It just drops off behind the edge of the road, just falls off in there. I think. Yeah. Well, gosh, that's all of Warren, Simpson, Logan counties that built on cave.
That real bad flood we had came through. That whole road was underwater. All the way, it was all the way up to the porch on those three houses that sit right on. I mean, yeah. I just like, yeah, that blew. My grandparents used to live over there.
Either.
Not more than it has. Larry, my mom's mom.
Uh-huh. Okay. That's a low, yeah, I thought that's a low-lying area right through there. That's kind of
That would be the last place in the world I feel that.
but you know, somebody will build one.
Or apartment. If it's cheap enough, somebody build it. Yeah. And they'll build it, and they'll get flood insurance, flood their house, and they'll make even more money than what they did when they built it. The thing is, if I was in town,
I can't imagine anything being built in there just looking at it. But like I said, you know, somebody like Robert's there, he'll probably buy a lot. Because they're reasonable priced. They're reasonably priced. They're not expensive in comparison to some others. $45,000, $50,000 for a good sized lot, $80,000 for 2.5 acres, you know, lot right there. You could probably get you. There's a lot there. Hey, let's go into the scriptures a little bit. We're in 2 Samuel, chapter 13, I think is where it was, where we're going to be looking at tonight. Starting in there. Once we get through this stuff right here, I'm going to do a little more research and kind of do some overview study things on the Kings, just kind of hitting. Yeah, man. 13. 2 Samuel 13.
Verse 13?
No, chapter 13. That's what you asked me, didn't you? You asked me which chapter. I said 13. Didn't he, Nick? That's right. That's what I'm telling you. You finish out chapter 12 with Solomon being born and David going to war again and all this kind of stuff. But you get into 13 and talks about Absalom. We're introduced to Absalom as well after Absalom, son of David, had a nice looking sister there named Tamar. Amnon loved her. The son of David. These are like siblings, half siblings and such. So it's just Corey, go ahead and get us started. 13 verses 1 and 2.
In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her.
Then enter the friend, in verse 3, enter the friend Jonadab. And he devises a plan to help his buddy Amnon out. So we move down to verse 5, verse 6. Jeremy, you want to read tonight? Tyler, you want to read tonight? We'll do 5 and 6. Amnon.
So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to him, I would like my sister Tamar to come and make some special bread in my sight, so I may eat from her hand.
Well, that's fine. No, you don't have to back it up. That's fine because what you're saying in verse 6 is what he was told to say in verse 5. Yeah. verse 6. Go ahead and do verse 7 then.
David sent word to Tamar at the palace, go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him.
There you go. Yeah. He's told this is what to do. This is what he does. David tells his daughter, go to his house and prepare food for him. That's what he wants. He's not feeling good. Go prepare food for him. So that's what they did. And then you just move down to verse 11 and 12. Damien, 11 and 12.
But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, come to bed with me, my sister. No, my brother, she said to him, don't force me. Such a thing should not be done, Israel. Don't do this wicked thing.
Now go ahead, verse 14, 15 as well.
But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. Then Amnon hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, get up and get out.
How about that? Everything was all good, man. He was obsessed with her until he did the deed. And I'm reading that you're reading that, and I'm reading it over here with you as well. And you know, just the fact that he says, "Come lie with me, my sister." I mean, I can't. They don't register in my head. That's a sick individual that says that. And she responds there, no, my brother. She calls him brother. This is not what, this shouldn't be done. You're right, it shouldn't be. But then it didn't make a lot of sense, because he violated her, and then it says he hated her with a greater hatred than he had love before he violated her. Drop down to verse 20, Corey, 20 and through 22.
Her brother Absalom said to her, has that Amnon, your brother, been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart. And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, desolate woman. When King David heard all of this, he was furious. And Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister.
Okay. There's almost like a little parenthetical phrase in there, verse 21. Because all you hear from this at this point right now is that David was furious about this. It was very angry. It's like this. Let's insert that little thought right there. But then it moves back. Absalom didn't say anything to Amnon, either good or bad, just business as usual. And then the deal's about to hit the fan. It's about to break loose here. Because Amnon is going to take vengeance for his sister. Absalom is having all the sheep shearers. They're all together. They're having a good time together. They're doing the sheep shearing, and there's a lot of eating and drinking that's going on. And Absalom comes to his father, the king, and says, let the king and his servants go with your servant, talking about himself. And verse 25, the king said to Absalom, no, we shall not all go, for we'll all be burdensome to you. And then Absalom said in verse 26, if not, let my brother Amnon go with us. The king said, why should he go with you? This says down here, he was angry. He'd be very angry about this thing. And for 2 years, we've just sat on this. Nobody's done anything about this at all, neither good nor bad. Tamar is living in desolation, or she's living at Absalom's house, and just being quiet, not getting out, being anything at all. And verse 27, but when Absalom urged him, he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. And Absalom took them, they all went, and He got them all drunk and then killed him. Where was it? Absalom commanded, verse 28, his servant, saying, "See now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say to you, strike Amnon, then put him to death. Do not fear. Have I not myself commanded you? Be courageous and valiant." And the servants of Absalom did to Amnon just as Absalom had commanded. And then all the king's sons arose, and each mounted his mule and fled. And then word got back that all of them had been killed. It said that Absalom, they came to David and said, "Absalom struck down all the king's sons, not one of them is left," which was not true at all. But Amnon was killed. He killed him, had him killed. And then Absalom fled. You get to verse 34, Absalom fled, went into hiding, and stayed into hiding. He went to his grandparents' house. Verse 37, he fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. David mourned his son every day, and Absalom had fled there, and he stayed there for 3 years. So, and then you get over, it's the middle of 14, verse 21, when you get Absalom's recalled. All this other stuff is going on. The other things are happening here. I'm just going to skip over that stuff right there. Verse 21, king said to Joab, "Behold, now I will surely do this thing. Therefore, and bring back the young man Absalom." Just called him the young man, didn't call him his son. Bring him back. And so Joab did so. He brought him back. And it's funny, though, that when he did, in verse 24, it's the king said, let him go to his own house and let him not see my face. So Absalom turned to his own house and did not see the king's face. That's kind of interesting, too. He brought him back, but he didn't want to see him. And then we learn about his hair a little bit. Verse 26, it was in every year. He cut his hair once a year because it was too heavy for him. And Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem. Verse 28, did not see his dad, the king. And then Absalom sent for Joab and said, "I want to see Dad. I need, so he let him come in there and see him." Then you begin chapter 15 with a conspiracy. Absalom decides that he's going to take over. He's going to rule the throne. He's going to take the throne of David from him. And so he begins this process of sitting out in the front gates. Just kind of overviewing this for us right here. He sits out in the front gates, and anybody that's coming in to have a case tried, where the king is supposed to hear what they're saying, Absalom was saying, "There's nobody here for that. I'll listen to you, and if I was in the leadership role, this is what I would do for you." And he began to win the people over. Everybody that was coming, every disgruntled person that comes through, Absalom is getting favor from them. And so this goes on. And then go to chapter 15, verse 11, it says, "Then 200 men went with Absalom from Jerusalem, who were invited and went instantly, and they did not know anything. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor." So this is going on. Then a messenger, verse 13, came to David saying, "The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom." David is king. And yet when he hears this, verse 14, Tyler, pick up in verse 14, right there in chapter 15, verse 14.
Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, "Come, we must flee, for none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us or bring ruin upon us and put the city to the sword."
Yeah. And the servants respond right there and said, "We're ready. Whatever you want to do, we're ready to go." See, he had all these men. He had all his soldiers, and he was a valiant warrior. And yet when he learns that Absalom is coming after him, he said, "We better flee. We better get out of here." So, and they head back to the mountains. They go into the caves where he was hiding from Saul years ago, which is just, here's the thing. that we understand from this. David was a great warrior to begin with, but and as I read through here, he's not a great father. He's a great warrior. He's a man of battle. But if it involves his family, his children, he's not very attentive to that. And so you learn Absalom's got a couple hundred men. Well, think about it. If you're the king and you've got the entire army with you and he's got a couple hundred men, who's going to win that battle? But because it's his son, he's got funky in the brain, screwed up in the head with this stuff that's going on. And you read that throughout here. If it involves his family stuff, it just seems like it gets worse and worse in this. And so he flees. He takes off. And as he's fleeing, as he's running, as he's going away, move on over to chapter 16. David came out in verse 5. David came out to Bahurim. Behold, there came out from there a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, and he came out cursing continually as he came. So, number one, I don't know where this guy came from, but he's from the family of Saul, and there shouldn't have been anybody left from the family of Saul, but here's somebody that is. We always read that they're wiping out or they annihilate, but then somewhere down the line, there's somebody else that pops up. There's always somebody else that's going to pop up that's in the enemies, where you can read at one point where they annihilated the Philistines, and then 3 or 4 chapters later, there's another army of Philistines that are coming through. So it's always something that's going on right there, but this guy came out in cursing and because of who he was and called him a man of bloodshed and worthless and such. And then you move to verse 15. And Damien, look at verse 15 of chapter 16. Ahithophel. There you go. Keep going. Yep. Hushai was David's confidant to begin with. And David sent him back and said, you go stay with him so you can keep me informed of what's going on, what's happening there. And so he would become a counsel right there, a counsel to Absalom, and then would send messages back to David, who's hiding out, what's going on. It's just becoming a mess right here with Absalom and David and all the underhanded things that are happening right there. And all this is going on until you get to chapter 18. And this is when Absalom is the story that we know of more than anything else about Absalom being killed. What's happening there? If you get to verse 5 of chapter 18, 5, 6, Corey, pick up right there in verse 5 and go on.
Commanded Joab, Abishai, and
Ittai.
be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. And all the troops heard the king giving orders concerning Absalom to each of the commanders.
Keep going.
David's army marched out of the city to fight Israel, and the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There Israel's troops were routed by David's men, and the casualties that day were great, 20,000 men. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest swallowed up more men that day than the sword.
How about that? Big battle is taking place right here. Big battle's taking place. But then you move to verse 9, and Tyler, pick up right there in verse 9.
Now Absalom happened to meet David's men. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under the big branches of large oak, Absalom's head got caught in the tree, and he was left hanging in midair, while the mule he was riding kept on going.
Keep going.
When one of the men saw this, he told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree.
How about that? I just saw him hanging in a tree. Jeremy, with our short hair, we don't have to worry about getting caught in the limbs, do we? Ain't much going to happen right there. But we already read that Absalom got his hair cut once a year because it got so heavy that it had to be his long, curly locks, and he'd get it cut off once a year. And so I don't guess it was time for the annual haircut because it was long enough that he was left hanging there in the tree. Damien, pick up at 11 right there, and 11 and 12. Chapter 18. Yeah, they all said, we heard what David said. Don't touch him, protect him, take care of him. Joab, who is the commander, he's the general, he said, y'all need to kill him. You need to kill him right there. No way. There is no way. Verse 14 and 15, Corey.
Joab said, I'm not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him.
Yeah. Took care of business. And then Joab blew the trumpet. The people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab restrained the people, and they took Absalom and cast him into a deep pit in the forest and erected over him a very great heap of stones. And all Israel fled, each to his tent. That's something else I find that's interesting in there. Whenever they're done, the soldiers wind up leaving. If somebody blows the horn, the battle's over, they don't go back, they leave. They leave and go back to their own tents and their own places. And so that's what's happened right here. And then word comes to David that his son has been killed. And in verse 21, Joab said to the Cushite, go tell the king what you've seen. And so he ran to David and told him. And David was sitting there in verse 24, sitting between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof and said, there's a man running by himself, he's coming. Then another guy was running behind him, and they were both coming, and they wound up telling him, he's been killed. He's dead. And what you find there is in verse 33, the last verse, that king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And thus he said as he walked, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died instead of you. O Absalom, my son, my son." Which I know a father is grieving over his son, but David didn't really have much of a relationship with any of his children. He was their father, but you don't see anywhere that he has much of a relationship with them. After all, I mean, Absalom had fled for killing a brother, his brother Amnon, and he fled for 3 years and lived with his mother's parents in Geshur. And then he comes back, and for 2 years after that, David doesn't even see him, so for 5 years, he's not even seen Absalom. And then he gets word that Absalom is taking over or, trying to threaten to kill him, and David flees himself, and he hasn't seen him, He does finally see him at one time. After 2 years, he sees him at one time for one meeting, but then that's it. But then you get to the end of it right here where he's told that Absalom is dead, and he grieves like they were the closest of family. And they're not. They weren't, but there it is. When you get into 19, Joab, who's the one that killed him, by the way, David doesn't know that yet. He doesn't know it's Joab that did this. Glad you came back and joined us again, man. But in 19, David's weeping. He's mourning over all of this, and Joab comes to him and verse 5, let's see. Who just read? You just read. Corey, go to verse 5, chapter 19, verse 5, and start there. We'll go from there and see.
Then Joab went into the house to the king and said, "Today you have humiliated all your men who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines.
Go ahead. Keep going.
You love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead. Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now."
Okay, yeah. Joab says, get your butt up and go greet your people. You know, he said in here, by grieving over this one who threatened, who took your throne from you, by grieving over his death, what you're saying is that you don't care about us. And I guess that's probably in the position that he was in, that would be true. That would be true. So he got up there in verse 8. He got up and he went to the gate, and behold, the king is sitting in the gate, and then all the people came before the king, and they move and restore him as king, put him back on the throne, or get him moved back in that position. And verse 14, thus he turned the hearts of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king saying, "Return you and all your servants." And they did. So they returned there, and he's marching his way back in. And it's a big celebration coming. And what's, I guess, funny about this, you remember the guy, it wasn't too long ago, the guy, as David's on his way out, there's this guy Shimei who's cursing him. Well, they come back the other way, right in front of his house again. And you get to verse 18. Get to verse 18. Tyler, read verse 18 there.
They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over, to do whatever he wished. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate.
Yeah, prostrate.
Prostrate before the king.
Go ahead, one more.
And said to him, may my Lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my Lord, the king, left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his hand, out of his mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Other words, he's saying, let's be cool. Don't hold that against me. It's kind of like, what is it? Kind of like talking out of both sides of your mouth, what we would say. On his way out, he's cursing him. On his way back in, he's going, "Hey, king, my lord the king, you're a good guy. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being king again. Thank you for, and by the way, just don't even think about that stuff I said earlier. It doesn't mean anything at all, So he's got caught in his own trap right there. So David's back. He's back, and he's doing his thing again, getting back on the throne and being reestablished. And this is not even considered a time when, as far as you look at the overall reign of King David, it's not even considered a time that this little period, a blip in his reign as king in the annals of history, that's not even there. So, he reigned 40 years, and 7 years in Judah and 33 years overall of Israel, Judah together right there. So it's not even considered as part of a little time. I don't know how long he was gone out of there. It wasn't long. So but this was the only one time we read about where somebody tried to really come in against David from within his own household as well. So there are other things that are happening now. There's going to be other revolts Other people are going to rise up now, and they're going to try to come against him. Other people are going to try to. There's going to be Sheba is going to try to go against him. Amasa. There's going to be another revolt from Beth Maacah. Is going to be there. The Gibeonites are going to issue a revenge in chapter 21. It's just going to keep. These things are going to keep. They're there until David is putting down all the revolts that are against him, everything that's going there. And then you move into chapter 22, and David is speaking probably his last song, writing his last thing that he's done here. He's speaking the last words that he's going to speak. It's his last stand of things that's going on there. His last song, chapter 23 is what it's called, his last song there. And he's rising up here, and he's going to be placing his son in position. Solomon is going to be put in position here toward the end of this. David wants to build the altar. He's putting Solomon in place to do these very things. That's basically what's going on before you get into the first part of 1 Kings, and David's about to die. So that's where we'll pick up. Right, we'll stop right there and pick up on him the next time. And I'm going to try to expedite us through the Kings in there. They're interesting, but Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles all run together. They kind of run together in the same story. Some things that are mixed and blended there together, but we'll try to push them together as quickly as we can, get through this as easily as possible. But that's basically 2 Samuel, what's happened there. Any questions, thoughts, ideas? Lots happened with David in his life, and he's just, I don't know. He's a good guy, but man, he's got some. He didn't do much with his family. That's the biggest thing I ever noted about David was that his relationship with his family was just kind of nonchalant. Good king, good warrior, good leader, unless it came to family. Should tell a story. Guys, thank you for being here tonight. Let's stand together. We'll dismiss in prayer. All right, Tyler, close us out, buddy.